Black man denied his own money, humiliated, profiled, and thrown out for no reason. At a high-end bank in Midtown Atlanta, a black man stepped up to the counter for what should have been a simple withdrawal. He slid his ID across the polished surface, but the teller barely glanced at it before pushing it aside, her expression unreadable, yet unmistakably dismissive. Minutes later, security was called. He was dragged out like a criminal while white customers walked away with stacks of cash. No questions asked. What the bank didn't know was that they had just humiliated the wrong man, did a very big mistake. When his true identity was revealed, they'd realize they had just picked a fight with the one person they should have feared the most. Earlier that morning, Nathaniel Grant walked into Grant & Gold Banking at exactly 9 a.m., the glass doors parting smoothly as he stepped inside. Sunlight poured through the massive windows, illuminating the marble floors. The hum of business filled the air. Employees in tailored suits moved behind counters, customers waited in neat rows, and the soft chime of the service bell rang at steady intervals. That IT was an operation he knew well. After all, he had built this institution from the ground up. But today, he wasn't here as CEO Nathaniel Grant. No board meetings. No investor calls. No press. Just a man making a routine withdrawal, $15,000 from his personal account. Something any customer should be able to do without issue. He wasn't wearing a custom suit, no designer watch, just a neatly pressed button-down, khaki slacks, and clean sneakers. To anyone watching, he was just another face in the morning crowd. As he stepped further inside, his sharp eyes caught sight of a customer at the counter, a middle-aged white man in a tailored navy suit. The teller, a young blonde woman, smiled warmly as she counted out $20,000 in neat stacks, sliding the bills across without hesitation. The man nodded, tucked the cash into his briefcase, and strolled toward the exit. No questions. No extra paperwork. No scrutiny. Nathaniel exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening before he forced it to relax. He had seen this before, felt it before, but today, in his own bank, he was going to make damn sure this wasn't happening. He stepped forward to the counter. The teller, Erin Carter, according to her name tag, didn't smile, didn't greet him. She simply reached under the counter and slid a clipboard toward him. "Fill this out." Her tone was cold, dismissive. Nathaniel glanced down at the form. Standard withdrawal paperwork. Nothing the man before him had to complete. He took his time, filling in each blank carefully before sliding it back along with his ID. Erin barely looked at it before shoving it back. "We can't process this." Nathaniel frowned. "Excuse me. We don't handle large cash withdrawals like this," she said, folding her arms. His brow furrowed. "I just watched that man walk out with $20,000 in cash." He gestured toward the door, where the previous customer was now stepping onto the busy street. "You didn't hesitate for a second with him." Erin's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's different." Nathaniel leaned slightly forward, his voice calm but firm. "How?" She averted her gaze, not out of discomfort, but irritation. Instead of answering, her eyes flicked toward the glass-walled office at the back, where a woman stood with arms crossed. Watching, Nathaniel followed her gaze. Victoria Langley, the bank manager. She was in her mid-40s, wearing an immaculately tailored suit with the sharp, calculating look of someone who had already made up their mind. The moment their eyes met, she gave Erin a slight nod. That IT was all Erin needed. "I told you," Erin said, tapping the withdrawal slip between them. "We can't process this." Nathaniel inhaled slowly, controlling his temper. "And I'm asking you why." Erin sighed, tilting her head. "It's just unusual. A withdrawal this large. It's suspicious." Nathaniel let the words settle in the air. Suspicious that he had heard it before, felt it before, lived it before. His voice was even when he replied. "You didn't seem suspicious when he did the exact same thing." A flicker of hesitation crossed her face, but she quickly masked it. "Sir, I don't make the rules." Nathaniel chuckled. "No, but you sure know how to apply them selectively." Erin bristled. "I need to get my manager." Without waiting for a response, she turned on her heel and strode toward the office. Nathaniel didn't move. He rested his fingertips against the cool marble counter, tapping slowly, matching the steady beat of his heart. The air in the bank had shifted, subtle, but undeniable. Customers shuffled uncomfortably. Tellers exchanged glances. No one spoke. No one interfered. Across the room, a woman, white, in her early 50s, watched with thinly veiled curiosity. Lisa Prescott, according to the name tag pinned to her purse. She hesitated, debating whether to say something. Nathaniel met her gaze briefly. She offered a small, uncertain smile. He didn't return it. Not because he was angry at her, but because he knew how this played out. People like Lisa watched, whispered, noticed when things like this happened, but they rarely did anything about it. The door to the back office swung open. Victoria Langley stepped out, heels clicking sharply against the tile. Her expression was unreadable. Erin followed close behind, her chin slightly lifted, wearing the smirk of someone who knew she had backup. Victoria smoothed down the front of her blazer, offering Nathaniel a polished, professional smile, the kind reserved for difficult customers. "Good morning, sir. I understand you're trying to make a large withdrawal." Nathaniel met her gaze evenly. "I am." Her smile never wavered. "Unfortunately, we have certain security protocols in place." And just like that, the game had begun. Nathaniel Grant narrowed his eyes. "Security protocols?" Victoria Langley nodded with a smooth, practiced smile. "Yes. For high-value withdrawals, we take extra precautions to protect our customers and staff." Nathaniel folded his arms. "And by extra precautions, you mean questioning me, but not the man who just withdrew more than I did." Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her jaw tensed. "I can't speak to other transactions, but in this case, I need to verify the source of these funds." Nathaniel exhaled sharply. "My paycheck. Same as every other deposit." Victoria tilted her head, ignoring his response. "And can you provide the exact amount of your last deposit?" Nathaniel scoffed. "You have my account open right in front of you. Why don't you check?" She didn't answer. Instead, she made a subtle motion. Ethan Reynolds, the bank's security guard, straightened from where he leaned against the wall. Without hesitation, he began walking toward the counter, his heavy boots echoing across the floor. Nathaniel stood his ground. He knew this game. A black man treated as a threat in a place he was supposed to belong. "I'm going to ask you again," Victoria said, still polished, still professional. "Can you verify the source of these funds?" Nathaniel dragged a hand down his face. "I've banked here for years, and not once have I been treated like this. So tell me, Victoria, what exactly about me makes you think I don't belong?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Even Aaron Carter, the teller behind the counter, looked uneasy. Lisa Prescott, standing near the customer service desk, shifted uncomfortably, gripping her purse. No one spoke. Victoria barely blinked. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Ethan stepped beside him. "Now." Nathaniel inhaled deeply, then reached into his pocket. Slow, deliberate. He raised his phone and hit record. "You're refusing my withdrawal despite having my identification and account information. You processed a larger withdrawal for a white customer before me, but now it's a problem." Victoria's jaw clenched. Ethan stiffened. "Step outside," Ethan ordered. Nathaniel didn't move. Ethan grabbed his forearm, fingers pressing hard. Nathaniel barely had time to react before he was yanked backward. His shoulder slammed into Ethan's chest as the guard spun him toward the door. A sharp gasp broke the silence. Someone muttered, "What the hell?" But no one stepped in. Another shove. Harder. His back struck the glass door, and the morning air hit him like ice. Ethan stood in the doorway, arms crossed, blank-faced. Then, the final insult at Nathaniel's ID, the very proof of his right to be there, was tossed at his feet. The small plastic card clattered against the pavement. Something burned hot in Nathaniel's chest, his pulse roaring in his ears. Before he could move, a shadow passed over him. Jamal Brooks, black mid-30s, exhaustion etched into his features, stepped forward silently. He crouched down, picked up the discarded ID, dusted it off, careful, almost reverent, then held it out. His eyes met Nathaniel's, filled with something unspoken. "This place," Jamal muttered, just loud enough for Nathaniel to hear. "Except now," Marcus Hale said, turning to the judge, "I have a receipt, a witness, and—" He paused, letting the moment stretch. "Your Honor, I request a review of Officer Rebecca Hayes' past arrest reports." The prosecutor shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Objection." That's irrelevant. Marcus met his gaze with a calm, knowing smile. I think it's extremely relevant. If Officer Hayes has a pattern of wrongful arrests, it speaks directly to her credibility today. The judge studied Marcus, then gave a curt nod. Request granted. The prosecutor slumped back into his chair. Marcus turned to Hayes. Officer Hayes, do you have a history of wrongful arrests? Her face paled. No. Marcus gestured to the bailiff, who was already pulling up records on the courtroom screen. Interesting, Marcus murmured. Because public records show 3 separate complaints of racial profiling against you in the last 2 years alone. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room that Hayes' fingers twitched at her sides. Marcus leaned forward slightly. How many of those cases involved black men? A tense silence. Finally, Hayes spoke, her voice tight. That has nothing to do with this case. Marcus tilted his head. Doesn't it? Hayes glanced toward the prosecutor, but he was already rubbing his temples, clearly regretting ever taking this case to trial. Marcus let the weight of the moment sink in before delivering his final blow. Your Honor, at this point, it's evident that I was not only falsely arrested, but that Officer Hayes acted with bias. I move to have this case dismissed immediately. The judge didn't hesitate. Motion granted. Case dismissed. Marcus exhaled. He had won, but he wasn't done yet. Because some victories were bigger than just one case, and Hayes was about to learn that firsthand. The gavel struck once, firm and final. Hayes barely moved. Shoulders squared, jaw tight, but Marcus could see it. The shift in her eyes, the creeping realization. She had walked into this courtroom expecting another easy conviction. Another name in a system that never questioned her authority. Instead, her name was now the one under scrutiny. Marcus adjusted his suit jacket, taking his time. He wasn't the type to gloat, but he also wasn't the type to let things slide. Before he could leave, the judge's voice cut through the silence. Before we conclude, Officer Hayes, I need to address something. Hayes snapped to attention. Yes, Your Honor. The judge removed her glasses, fixing her with a steady gaze. The court does not take allegations of misconduct lightly, and Mr. Hale's case has raised serious concerns. As of now, I am formally recommending an internal investigation into your past complaints. Hayes' face drained of color. Your Honor, that's unnecessary. The judge held up a hand. That's not for you to decide. She turned to the bailiff. Make sure the appropriate parties receive my recommendation. Marcus watched as Hayes swallowed hard, her hands tightening into fists, but he stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Officer Hayes, you were so sure of my guilt that you didn't bother checking the facts. You saw me and made up your mind before I even opened my mouth. She said nothing. Marcus continued, his voice steady. I could have lost my job, my reputation, my freedom. But I fought back because I had the knowledge and resources to do so. He let that sink in. But what about the people who don't? Hayes' lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to respond. But no words came out. The courtroom doors swung open. A man in a dark suit entered, a police department official. He exchanged a quiet word with the bailiff before approaching the judge's bench. The judge nodded and turned back to Hayes. Officer Hayes, you are hereby placed on administrative leave, effective immediately, pending investigation. Hayes' eyes widened. This isn't fair. Marcus let out a quiet breath. Neither was my arrest. The silence was suffocating that a moment later. Hayes was escorted out. Her steps were slow, heavy, the weight of consequence finally settling on her shoulders. Marcus picked up his briefcase, running a hand over the smooth leather. This wasn't just about him. This was something bigger. For once, the system had taken notice. He stepped out of the courthouse into the midday sun, inhaling deeply. The air felt different, lighter. But he knew better. The world hadn't changed in the last few hours. But maybe, just maybe, one person had been forced to see it differently today. As he descended the steps, a voice called out, Mr. Hale? Marcus turned at a young officer from the precinct jogged toward him. The same one who had hesitated when Hayes handed over his wallet. The one who had seen the truth before anyone else had wanted to acknowledge it. The officer stopped a few feet away, catching his breath. I just wanted to say what you did in there. That was something. Marcus raised an eyebrow. The officer scratched the back of his neck. I see cases like this all the time. People arrested over nothing, stuck in the system because they can't fight back. But I've never seen someone turn it around like that. Not in court. Marcus studied him for a moment. You ever speak up when you see it happening? The officer's jaw tightened. It's not that easy. Marcus nodded. Neither was proving my innocence. The officer exhaled, shoulders sagging slightly. He knew Marcus was right. Marcus glanced back at the courthouse doors. It starts with one person saying something, doing something, not looking the other way. The officer shifted on his feet. Yeah. He looked down, then back up. Officer Hayes isn't the only one like that on the force. His voice was quieter now. But not all of us are like her. Marcus gave him a long look. Then prove it. The officer nodded once, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the city streets. Marcus stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in that he had won his case, but the fight was bigger than him. There were too many people who wouldn't get their day in court. Too many who didn't have the knowledge, the resources, or the chance to fight back. That was what needed to change. He pulled out his phone and stared at the screen before dialing a number that a woman's voice answered. Marcus? Everything okay? He smiled slightly. Yeah, Mom. Everything's okay. She exhaled, relief thick in her voice. I've been praying all morning. Marcus leaned against the railing, his gaze on the streets below. I think I know what I want to do next. A pause. Oh, he nodded. I want to start something. Maybe a legal defense fund. Something for people who can't fight back. His mother's voice softened. That's a big undertaking, baby. He smiled. Yeah, but it's the right thing to do. She was quiet for a moment. Then, finally, she said, I think you're right. Marcus slipped his phone back into his pocket. He had walked into that courtroom as a defendant that he walked out as something more.